Well, you've got quite the story to tell us. I want to start going a little differently here. So you and I had a little pre-call about our podcast, and I learned that you are a co-founder. Your wife, Jennifer, is the other co-founder. Is that true?
Correct. Yeah, I got to give her all the credit. I mean, she's the brains of the operation. I think she should have the founder title because it was her idea.
Oh, really?
And I get the co-founder title. So I'm just happy to be her first employee. That's all.
But you're the face of the brand because you're the live wire extrovert, right? She's more like wants to be behind the camera. She's doesn't want the attention.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think in every relationship, whether it's work or marriage and life, there's always a yin and yang, and we definitely have an introvert-extrovert marriage happening, and I actually even have that. I can see that in my kids. We have 2 kids, and we definitely have an introvert and an extrovert. So I'm the guy that loves talking to people like you and being on podcasts, and I can do this all day. And my wife would, not so much. So I get to do a little bit of extroverting with you right now.
Cool. Well, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm actually the introvert in my relationship with my wife.
I can't see it. I can't see it.
I am not an extrovert.
You're faking it really, really well.
Okay, Jennifer will understand this. Here's the deal with us introverts. We only have so much extrovert battery. Because a true introvert, we have a little bit, we're not like totally like, hermits. We're not like, in a cave somewhere. Like we do have some extrovert energy, but once it's drained, dude, I'm done. Like I record 2 podcast episodes in a row and then a day, and I do that twice a week. But like after today, like after I'm done interviewing you, like I don't want to talk to anybody for like hours. Like I have to decompress when I drive back home. Yeah, so you don't get that though. You don't understand that.
No. So that's funny because along the exact same lines, my wife and I had the same. She actually came up with it. I think earlier this year. She goes, when I wake up in the morning, Drew. She goes, I have like, I'll use your battery example. I have like 10 sticks in my battery, and after I talk to 10 people, I'm done. Whether that's by like 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. done. And you wake up with 0 and you try to get to 100 by the end of the day. And I'm like, that's exactly right. I started 0. How can I get to 100? And Frank, you're like, it's barely after lunch and you're like the 50th person I've talked to. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 50 left. Let's go. What else? Who else am I going to talk to today?
Oh God, no. You see, that's the difference. And my wife, she gets energized too. The more people she's around, so she gets more energy. So she'll be like,
1,000%.
She'll be like, hey, let's go out with so-and-so for dinner. I'm like, we just saw them like, last week. And she goes, exactly. It was last week. And I'm like, I just want to be home tonight, but at the same time, it's like when I do the podcast, like I'm on, like I am totally me. This is who I am, but I only have like so much. Yeah. I only have so much battery juice,
Well, again, I believe personally in marriage and then also in a working environment, you have to have balance, right?
Right.
So I'm very lucky and blessed to be married to my work partner, and also we have that same relationship at home and we do at work. So it's a great give and take.
So you guys work well together then?
Yeah, we have been married. I've been happily married for 19 years, and Ivybrook, actually, the creation of Ivybrook came about on our honeymoon. So we were on an airplane on the way to Hawaii, and they give you those, little square cocktail napkins, and we were, talking about, if you would open a business, it would be a preschool. We've had that conversation before, and I gave her a cocktail napkin, and I said, what would it look like? Draw me the building, because I'm the real estate guy. Like real estate's in my DNA. And she drew on that cocktail napkin what is the blueprint of our first school. And I came back from the honeymoon and I said, build my wife her dream. I gave that cocktail napkin to an architect, and that is exactly the floor plan of our very first school that has now been open for 17 years.
You are an amazing husband.
Yeah. Well, I believe in my wife wholeheartedly. So I'm just excited she let me be a part of it.
Oh, that's great. I believe in my wife too. And we definitely have our strengths, our weaknesses, but my wife and I, we worked together in the very beginning when we were running our men's softball league in New York. It didn't go so well. Like she was amazing at what she did. Like she was amazing on the phone and talking to people. But I was so controlling. Like if she put the stamp on the envelope crooked, I'd have a freak out. And she was like, what's the big deal? It's a stamp. It's still going to get there. Or we would have like an introduction letter and a registration form. And she would stuff the envelopes and she would put the registration form in front of the introduction letter and put it in the envelope. And it would drive me up a wall. I'm like, how can you put a form in front of an introduction letter? So I think she quit on me a couple of times. So by the time I like launched I9 Sports, she was busy raising the kids and stuff. And she was great supporter and definitely somebody who I would rely on to go back to and say, this is going on, that's going on. What do you think? But every day though, man, we couldn't work together.
The first year was the most challenging because they're kind of tripping over each other. You don't know your lane. And that's kind of the vocabulary that we use both at home and in all of our franchise locations is figure out what your lane is and stick to your lane and don't venture into somebody else's. So, my lane is definitely the business side of things, real estate, business. I mean, hand me an Excel spreadsheet. I'm one of the few people in the world that is an extrovert and still loves Excel spreadsheets. I know those don't typically go hand in hand together. I don't know why. I don't know how that happened in life, but that's me. But in the finances, I'm not going to have her look at QuickBooks and give me a P&L statement. That's never going to happen. At the same time, she is never going to ask me to go teach a class at an Ivybrook Academy. I am not a teacher, an educator. So I know our lanes and, even in Ivybrook, even in our franchise locations, we have, it really has two mindsets you need to run an operation. Sometimes it's husband and wife. Sometimes it's you hire out the other role. One person needs to be in charge of the education, the curriculum, that school teacher mindset. That's one person. Then you have to have the business person, right? You got to have someone that knows the numbers and understands the P&L. You've got to have both. So you have to be able to marriage both of them. So a lot of our franchise owners, the best ones are really the husband and wives that have that ability. One takes one lane, one takes the other. I haven't seen someone yet that has the right mindset to do both because that's two different skill sets. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just not as easy. So if somebody doesn't have one skill set, then it either needs to be the spouse or you hire that out as your first person to come on board to work alongside you. So hope you don't mind. I shifted from the paradox of marriage relationships over to like franchise good working relationships.
No, it's true though. Do you guys measure? And I'm totally going off the script here because I've got so many different things to ask you about how you even identify those right people that are franchisees to get that right trait or personality. Do you use an assessment tool or anything like that to identify if this person has the right skill set to be a franchise owner? Because I'm sure you don't have all couples running you guys have.
No, they're not for sure.
Okay.
We have a pretty rigid system of screening people. I don't have necessarily a specific personality profile test that we put people through. But after, we've been in business for 17 years. Actually, today's our anniversary, 17th year today.
Congratulations.
Today is 17th year in business. So it's an honor to be on your show on an anniversary date. But we've been franchising for 7, right? So we've been in business for 10 years before we ever started getting into franchising. I will definitely say massive learning curve over the last 7 years. Just because you run a brick and mortar business, I would say uber successfully for 10 years, it is a game changer when you start franchising. It is a whole new company and everything. So you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
From day one, we were very rooted in our values and made sure that we only took on franchise owners that really, were like-minded. Okay. Like-minded. Let me explain that because we have an extremely diverse background of candidates and cultures in our company, which I love, but like-minded meaning that everyone has the same mindset of they love working with children. Okay. They don't necessarily have to be a teacher, but they love the aspect of children, helping the community, doing a good benefit overall. This is you're not changing oil, right? You're not, that service is extremely needed, but our franchise owners, they have the love of being an entrepreneur, but they also have the love of doing something meaningful, of value, and giving back to the community. when those two things meet, man, that is a powerful franchise owner. I mean, that's our secret sauce. There's certain things that I definitely don't want to divulge that we make sure people go through the process, because I don't want them to learn how to get through my systems and my screenings that we have put in place. But we're very thankful that the very, very first person that sat in front of my wife and I that tried to buy a franchise, and they slid us a $50,000 check on the desk, we said no to. That was the hardest decision. It was incredibly hard, but they did not hit the values. And, when someone says, I'm not sure whether I want to own, I'll just use an oil change place or a kid's preschool. Well, if you're not sure which way to go, it is not me. You need to go buy your gas station or something else. And that's where that candidate was. And they were on the fence. I'm like, it's between you or somebody else. Here's my check. I guess I'll just go with you. And I'm so thankful we said no, because that really was the catalyst to really get us to where we are today, with having a very, very strong brand with a 0 closing rate ever.
Drew, that is so
very
rare.
About that.
Dude, that is so rare, because then, like, one of the first things we hear when we first franchise our business is that, you want to keep the lights on, so you want to sell franchises, of course. And it is so hard to tell people no when you're looking at your checkbook, saying, I have 0.
And the first check.
And the first
check. 0 revenue.
Right.
Only expenses.
And this person
that was hard. It was hard. It was good.
It is very difficult, but I kudos to you, man. That's very, very, very challenging. But you sticking to your guns, making sure that they're the right person, is critical, because I've said this before, that I think like the first dozen or so franchises make or break the culture of an organization. Not just validating to say that this works or not works, but that culture becomes the breathing, living, organism of the company. The franchisees are so much part of it. And if they're not part of that mission, it's just going to be so much, it's like rolling a rock uphill. You just don't need to do that. I had a potential franchisee, I'll never forget, kind of similar, was he said, I love sports. And he says, I'm thinking of doing, he says, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to be contemplating, he goes, I might do I-9. He goes, I might actually open sports clips. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with opening a sports clips franchise. I was like, but you do realize that other than the name, there's nothing to do with sports. You're in the hair cutting business, right? And he goes, yeah, but there's sports, there's memorabilia. I'm like, dude, there's nothing wrong with it, but you're not in the sports business. And it was an epiphany for him. He realized that ultimately he did want to be in the sports business. And he was a very successful franchisee for about 15 years and sold it for a ridiculous sum of money. I'm so proud of him. He did all the hard work himself. He was one of my first franchisees out of North Florida. But same thing, like you have to make sure that they understand what they're getting themselves involved with, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.